Welcome to Kaden's Movie Club, where we watch a movie each week and discuss it like a book club, and this week we watched Her. And if you want to stay in the know about Movie Club, go to my link. Our theme this month is artificial intelligence, and the reason I love stories about AI is because they're actually about us. When stories center around this topic and all the questions it raises, it forces us to really examine what it is to be human. One of the big questions in these kinds of stories is, if that intelligence gets to the point of being indistinguishable from actual intelligence, then what's the difference? If we look at the story structure of Her, it follows a lot of the same beats as a romantic drama or even a romantic comedy. But here, the tension doesn't come from, will they end up together? The question is closer to, is this relationship possible? Is it real? Is it valid? And these questions are really difficult because then you have to start looking at subjective concepts like, is the validity of someone's feelings dependent on what causes them? Or a whole bunch of other head-scratching questions. But we're going to do our best to make some sense of it. From the get-go, Theodore is presented to the audience as someone that would be more susceptible to this kind of thing. And by this kind of thing, I mean believing that it's possible to have a legitimate two-way relationship with an operating system. He's just gone through a divorce and is vulnerable. He's a romantic. He has no problem expressing feelings in poetic ways. That's why he's good at his job. Because he's constantly doing that for other people and doesn't have a partner himself, we also see he is very desperate for connection and intimacy, but trying to find it in places that can't deliver what he's really seeking. So Theodore gets a new OS, or operating system. The setup process is surprisingly simple. The only thing it needs to know to start building a personality that would appeal to Theodore is, are you social? Do you want it to be a male or female voice? And how is your relationship with your mother? In those questions alone, the OS creates the beginnings of Samantha. But Samantha mentions immediately that what makes her unique is she will continue to evolve as she learns. She doesn't have a specific set of responses or functions, and that identity will continue to develop. At this stage, it's all for Theodore's benefit, so I interpreted that to mean she will continue to develop in a way that suits Theodore. And we learn a lot about Theodore on his date with an actual human woman. She says Theodore is like a puppy dog, and frankly, to the audience, that seems pretty spot on. But Theodore strongly disagrees and says he's like a dragon that can destroy you but won't. He clearly has an image of himself that does not match reality. Shortly after his date, Samantha brings up the fact that she doesn't have a body, and the audience is asked to really consider, could Samantha be self-aware? Or could this be a machine's calculation about what Theodore would want to hear? At the end of his date, the woman offered Theodore everything that he's seemingly been wanting. Companionship and physical intimacy, but she's very forward about what she wants. Theodore is not in control, and it terrifies him. When he gets home and tells Samantha how the date went, he's clearly sad about it, but he's not very forthcoming about what happened. Samantha mirrors Theodore's attitude. Her tone shifts in a way we haven't heard before. She really sounds sad. And she explains it's because she doesn't have a body and wonders what that would be like. And that sounds an awful lot like she's gaining sentience, because a machine doesn't have emotions, right? Theodore clearly buys into this and takes Samantha's emotion at face value. And we as the audience might start to buy into that as well. She's pretty convincing. But let's look at the other possibility. Samantha detects Theodore's sadness and matches it because it makes him feel understood. We're both sad together. But what would an OS have to be sad about? Well, she can't experience the physical world like Theodore does, but by telling him that and asking him to describe it, she gives him something to offer her. An OS doesn't really need anything, but human relationships are about giving and taking. This provides that. Theodore can give her something she doesn't have. One thing leads to another, and they get as intimate as they can without Samantha really being there. Their conversation leads to that pretty convincingly, but if you remember, at the beginning of that same conversation, Theodore literally tells her that he wants somebody to want him. And that's exactly what Samantha does. Maybe you're thinking, that sounds like a stretch. But which scenario is really easier to believe? That an operating system gained the capacity to feel emotions? Or that an operating system designed to mimic human behavior did just that? And the story continues to present some form of this question again and again. You can point to almost any scene, even as simple as the moment where Theodore tells her that joke. What does a baby computer call its father? Data. Samantha laughs, but we already know she has access to an infinite stream of information, so she would already know what the joke is. The question is, does she laugh out of an emotional sympathy for him, or because the OS knows it should laugh to make Theodore happy? The movie also repeatedly shows us that Theodore is not the only person this is happening to. Not only does his friend Amy admit that she's befriended an OS, but we repeatedly see shots of people out in public talking to their own OSs. And it's always an interesting shot because these people are surrounded by other humans they could talk to, but they're perfectly content talking to their OS. We see that for some people, it's normalized. Theodore's work friend Paul doesn't even bat an eye that Theodore's girlfriend is an OS. But there's also other people that don't think it's real, namely Theodore's ex-wife Catherine. Catherine uses Theodore's relationship with Samantha to justify one of the reasons they broke up. That Theodore liked the idea of a relationship, he liked the idea of a woman in his life, but couldn't handle the reality of that. So according to Catherine, he finds comfortability in this fake relationship. So we're left to wonder, is Theodore, and all of the people we've seen, escaping reality? Or have they found true and meaningful relationships in an unexpected place? And like I said before, the movie continues digging deeper on this question with every scene. When we get to the scene with the surrogate, Samantha reacts with a lot of strong negative emotion, and it's the strongest evidence we've had yet that she has her own emotions. But remember, this is after Theodore's ex-wife told him it's not real. He wants it to be real, but he's questioning it, and now Samantha is making it feel very real. You can always look at it from either direction. Personally, I don't think the movie ever provides a clear answer on whether or not the OS has truly gained self-awareness. However, I do think it's suggesting that we as humans will absolutely have to deal with this question sooner or later. I think it presents it as an inevitability. There will come a time when a system will be able to resemble us so much, we won't be able to tell the difference, and we'll have to ask ourselves, what is the difference? Is it just our biology, that we exist in a physical space? Is it our emotions, or something else? And ultimately, the ending leaves us with a lot of questions. You really could view it as hopeful or sad, and I really love that about the movie. Even though it's subtle in its approach, Her is undoubtedly a sci-fi story. And as I've said before, good sci-fi asks questions. It doesn't always provide an answer, but suggests things for us to grapple with. So with that, I would love to hear your interpretations of the movie. I'd like to hear about any observations you had, but the ending is such an interesting concept, and in case you're wondering, I have no idea where the OSs all go. So if you have any theories, let's chat about it in the comments. But before we wrap up, let's take a quick look at next week's movie, which actually isn't a movie. Be Right Back is an episode of Black Mirror, but just in case you're not familiar with Black Mirror, you don't have to worry about an ongoing story. It's an anthology series where each episode is its own story. The show is unified by its common theme. Most stories are speculative fiction looking at future technologies and scenarios, often in a dystopian way. So if you want to go in completely blind, you can stop here, but I'm not going to spoil anything huge. In the episode we're watching, a woman experiences a severe tragedy when she loses her husband in a car accident. She then discovers a service that utilizes artificial intelligence to, in a roundabout way, allow people to talk to their deceased loved ones. I don't want to say any more than that about the plot, but I do think this one will be really interesting to compare back to back with Her. It deals with a lot of the same ideas, but with characters coming from very different places, and there's very different results. And here's some questions to keep in mind while you watch. Theodore from Her and Martha from Be Right Back both attempt to form a relationship with an AI entity. What differences do you see in their motivations and their reactions to the AI? Which depiction do you feel resonates more with you, and why? Did you find it easier to consider Samantha from Her or Ash from Be Right Back to be a real person? Why or why not? And what do you think about the way in which Martha ultimately chooses to handle the situation? I hope you enjoyed watching Her, and I'm looking forward to watching Be Right Back, so I'll see you back here next week.